Hello everyone, it's Toby from Toby's Urbansketch, and today I want to show you a quick tips and tricks video on how to rescue your line work. So we all get there, we sort of got something wrong, it's just not looking right, and we think, oh, I'm going to have to start again, throw this away. But actually I think there's a lot of ways that you can rescue line work which feels like it's gone wrong. And I just want to take you through a few, I'm going to call them key tips to do that. And we're going to draw just a little scene. It's going to be a lighthouse, and we'll use that to work out how we can rescue our line work. So my first tip is to start gentle. So just by starting really gently, so I'm using a fountain pen upside down, making my lines really loose. And if I sort of go wrong, or let's say this is supposed to be a cliff, and I go completely wrong, get the size wrong, and it just doesn't feel right. Well, I'm gentle, so we're going to be able to rescue that later. And it works the same. If we do the lighthouse and I go really wonky, oh no, it's ruined, right? But we'll see, is it ruined? Can even go wonky there as well. So number one tip for rescuing your line work is to not overdo it at the beginning. Don't go in gung-ho and press really hard, creating big bold lines. So how can we rescue this, having done it so obviously wrong, if you like? Well, by having those simple lines, we can just go up and down and gently bring out the right shape. So simply keeping things loose and gentle means that we can gently go over and we can bring out the right shape. So we can keep going up, and suddenly our lighthouse is looking happy, like a lighthouse. And it's got these lines in, but they're looking a bit more like texture now, aren't they? We could do the same here. We can basically reshape our whole cliff just to encompass these areas. And we've got still a couple of marks which are wrong, haven't we? We've got this, and we got these. So how are we going to rescue these things? Well, let's start with this and this first. When you've got these lines, when they've gone wrong, or they're not the structural lines you intended them to be, well, instead of being structural lines, they can become textural lines, and we can start incorporating them into the texture. So this lighthouse has got lots of bricks on, so suddenly we can just use these lines to create a bit of texture, a bit of interest. Equally, it might be that we want to add some shadow down this side, and so we could just do that. And again, we just gradually incorporating these incorrect lines into texture, into shadow, into being correct, into being something different to what we might have intended, but still being great. With this, so this is sort of natural structure, so that's great because it gives us a lot of freedom, and we can do exactly the same. We can suddenly just add some little geometric shapes, and then we can just use this. This is now, instead of being an incorrect shape of our cliff, it's now a sort of crevasse with little dark bits, light bits, because of all the interesting shapes. But then we've got this, haven't we? So we can't really incorporate this into what's supposed to be there. It doesn't fit, doesn't make sense. So what can we do? Well, we could leave it. It's going to fade with the colours, so that's one option, is just to accept there's an interesting line there. We could even sort of just replicate that kind of line elsewhere, and it becomes part of the style, right? Or we can go, you know what, we're sketching, but we don't have to be totally fixed to the reference or the scene in front of us. So what could this become? It could become loads of things. So a nice example would be, could become a bush, couldn't it? You know what? Maybe our scene has a bush. That might not work for the most famous of signs, or of scenes. Sorry, might not work for the most famous of scenes, but it will work for a lot of things. And a house could easily have a tree next to it. No one will know. Equally, it could have become a little house. Lighthouses often have little houses next to them. So let's just incorporate that, and you can start just inventing little bits in your scene to cover up mistakes. So now we sort of have all these wobbles and wibbles everywhere, but they're blending and fitting. And what's my last sort of bit of advice? Well, sometimes things just go, there's a bit too much going on, it's getting really messy, and one way of rescuing it is to actually just add some really bold structural lines. So suddenly, to just create a bit of order, we can come in and we can go, right, this is the structure of our sketch, and these lines will now just take precedence in our head when we're looking at it. And it's a technique I often use when, especially sketching quickly, when things haven't quite gone to plan, and you know, often after I've added the colour, I'm like, it just doesn't quite capture what I want. But just, it's amazing what adding a really bold line, so even taking like a fine liner with a 0.8mm tip and adding a really bold outline can just, again, bring a lot of structure to an image which might have lost it. And there you go. So there's 4 tips on how to rescue your line work if you feel it's gone wrong. I hope you've enjoyed that. Please let me know in the comments. Please do like and subscribe, of course, a huge help to my little channel. And ask me any questions you want, give me ideas for future videos. And thank you, of course, for watching.